2020 Tantra, Crown Tantra, info in the description. When you engage in escapism and you press the eject button on your emotions, like if you're a vapor or a smoker and you go through that anxiety or that grief that starts to surface, and as soon as it begins to surface, whether you consciously know it or not, you engage in the substance or the substance so that you don't have to address those emotions. So the grief is coming from the lungs because that's where it's being held. And as the lungs clean themselves, typically as you sleep, because most people are asleep during those hours, you should look in. By the way, you should look into the hours in which each organ is detoxing. You can look at TCM organ clock online or whatever. If you breathe at certain times, do breath work at certain times, you'll release certain emotions and certain toxins. But let me digress. So as the lungs have begun to cleanse themselves, then those emotions come up that they're not really emotions. They're really diseases. Anger is a disease. Anxiety is a disease. Emotions are gratitude, which we'll call love. Those are real emotions. So anger and different lusts, pride, those are not emotions. Those are diseases. Those are the organs not functioning properly and due to obstruction in some way, some obstruction of communication. So, because communication is the flow of prana or light. So, anyway, as you begin to purge and the lungs clean themselves like that, then you're pretty much moving that plaque around. That lymphatic system is moving that plaque around, and then the emotion starts to come out, and then you get the external temptation or the external events that match that, because it's just emotional vomit. As you begin to release the emotions, you're basically just like throwing up your food. Like you're tasting it going the other way. If you're throwing it up, you're like, oh man, I remember that's what I'm throwing up because I can kind of taste it. It's the same thing with the emotions. So as you release the emotions, you remember the origin of those emotions. And if you're present for it, then you're less likely to put those substances back into your body. But if you press the eject button, the escapism button, and you vape or you smoke, or that's just for grief. So if it's anger, then that's your problem. When the anger, if you're fueled by anger and your movements are stemming from anger and that origin of emotion, or what you want to call emotion, then or energy. If anger is what's fueling you and directing you, then it's the liver. So whenever that crops up, whenever the liver has cleaned itself in those later hours of the evening, early hours of the morning, from like 11 to 2 is gallbladder and liver. So you're dealing with that anger. And if you were to breathe and go into meditation, accepting the breath, following the breath during those hours, then you would get to the root of your anger, because the breathing would create the circulation, the flow of blood or prana with the liver. So whatever the liver would be basically given a bunch of energy so that it can cleanse and do its job. So in that process, everything that's in it will be purged. So you have to do the physical end of it, the rudimentary end. That will start to cleanse, and as that happens, then you're like peeling off the layers. So you peel off the thick plaque, and then beneath that is this deep emotional waste. And it's just a process of purging that, and then you taste that emotion on the way out, and you're like, oh, this is what it comes from. And as you do that and you peel back the layers, you more so like you realize where you come from, your origins, your likeness, and what isn't you. So that's more so the emotional vomit. That's the process of unbecoming and not being fueled by those. They're not, like I said, they're not emotions. Those are diseases. If it's anxiety, then it's the bladder and kidneys. There's a disease somewhere in there. And the disease is really just an obstruction or a blockage of the flow of chi or prana or orgasmic energy, whatever, ecstatic energy, through the channels or meridians that are associated with that organ or that part of the tissue. Because organs are just tissue. Everything is just skin, and it's just folded or bound in a different way. It's just basically stitched in a different way. It's all just tissue. It's three layers of tissue is what the body is. So the tissue is all communicating. So through the rivers of the blood, the channels, through the blood, and then the blood is just a representation of the less dense plasma or spirit or breath. Because even if you drop the body, the breath is going to continue on. It's the body is a concentration of breaths. The breath is concentrating or looking through the body to see itself. So in that process of having a body and seeing itself and addressing, the moment at hand, you're going to go through that unbecoming process, that transformation process. And like I said in the last video, that which transforms, isn't what's being transformed. Because the inner being or the non-being that creates the being, that is unchanging. Like I said, the likeness of it is an internal piece that is perfect, that is never tempted, that never wants. It's just pure consciousness. So that is a transformer. So the body is the reflection of that, and that's the process of unbecoming and experiencing self in physical form, or whatever you want to call that. There is no self, really, if you want to break it down, because since everything is the self, if others are all you and facets of you, then that means there is no other, because they're all you, right? But since you can see that as a mirror, that there is no self or other, because they're you and you are them, so there is no self and there's no other. So it's just the consciousness and reflections of consciousness. And upon reflection, again, because reflection is what you would say, looking back, right? You right? Because knowing is the ghost of being. You're conscious, you go through an experience, then you digest the experience, then you say like, oh, I know this or I know that, but that's the ghost of being. Because you were being in the moment as things unfolded, and then as you digest and reflect, you know, or what people call knowing. But that, again, that's the ghost. That is the ripple from being. Like I said, the consciousness is directed in a direction, or whatever, however you want to look at it, and then thoughts and emotions follow it. Emotions are just thick thought anyway, like water is dense air. So the consciousness is focused on different things or passing through different things, and thoughts and emotions are byproducts of the consciousness. Knowing is the ghost of being. You can't know infinity, but you can be it. 2020 Tantra, Crown Tantra, info in the description. Rather throw it up than keep it in you, with the emotional vomit.